Hello, my name is Henry Portner, and I have been a dirt attorney. I've been a real estate attorney for more years than I would care to describe presently, but it exceeds 30 and it was slightly more than 50. In any event, I've had experiences that I would consider to be war stories, and I'm about to describe them in several recordings. And I guess another name for it would be 50 ways to land up in debtor's prison. And of course, we don't have debtor's prisons anymore. But if they had one with some of the experiences that I'm about to share with you, you would be in debtor's prison. So these are stories of the worst of the worst. They really were experiences that you do not want to experience, and that's the purpose of these videos, to learn not what to do, or to learn what to do in the right way and go about it in a methodical and judicious way. So the first one of my war stories was very early in my career, which I'll call the floating high rise. Now, I'm just going to give some descriptions of some of these situations, and in following videos, which I hope you'll subscribe to, I'm going to go into each individual situation in greater detail. The next situation is what I would call the Mashpee Indians declared the entire city.
I don't know that one.
The Mashpee Indians declared the entire city their tribal lands and placed a lien on the entire city, which you can imagine effectively meant nobody could do anything with their property. Of course, that would land up in federal court. The next one I consider a very tragic but life story of my family, which is the non-alarm fire. That's it, 9 alarms fire, in which 9 different alarm companies came to fight a fire which started next door in a tire recapping plant and spread over to my grandfather's and my grandmother's building, where they were paint manufacturers for more than a generation. And what we learned is that the Philadelphia Fire Department did not know how to fight a chemical fire. And they sprayed it with water, which made the fire worse. That destroyed the building and basically wiped out the family. That's a story that I certainly won't enjoy telling, but it's certainly a story that is worthy of hearing. The next one has to do with a very, very good client, a long-standing client, where we bought some land up in northern New Jersey, up in Neptune, and we wanted to build a shopping center, and we started digging for a foundation, and we struck number 2 fuel oil. That engendered about 10 years of litigation. And then I spent most of my career on what I consider the pleasantries, and that is in opposite of what it was of rent control. And the politics of rent control and the nightmare, I mean the absolute nightmare of being a landlord in rent control properties. The next one was rather a little scary. Is when I had to go up to Islip, New York for a settlement, and the developer had a gun in his briefcase. That was a little unnerving. The next one on my list is a combination of what I'll call termites, lead paint, and asbestos. And if you have had the pleasure of dealing with any of those issues, you will find out that any one of those issues could put you in the poorhouse. Hence the synonym that I use for debtor's prison. The next issue was a very, very serious issue that landed up in basically 2 Superfund sites out of Princeton, New Jersey, which are referred to as cleaning fluid polluting the city wells. Yes, simple cleaning fluid, in this case, was used during the Korean War, and they basically just threw it out in the back or dumped it down the drain, and it went into, many years later, leached down into the city water wells. That created about 13 years of litigation, or 14 years of litigation. Then there are a number of cases where I represented unfortunate parents who had bought their residence in what is referred to as cancer cells. They were areas where there was an abnormal number of cancer, particularly and unfortunately in children. This happened in southern Florida. Then the next one was very early in my career, represented a lovely client who had had a lovely home, but unfortunately they built a shopping center right next to her home. And lucky the whole house didn't move, but the water pressure was collapsing the basement. That water pressure was coming from the runoff of the water of the parking lot that they had built, which became an impervious surface in the shopping center. Now, coming to where I currently am a realtor, which is California, we're going to discuss squatters' rights. A squatter being a person who occupies a property or an apartment and doesn't pay any rent, doesn't pay anything, and doesn't want to leave. That makes for some interesting and costly litigation that I'll also discuss in the landlord-tenant court. A nightmare. The next issue has to do with a property right that arises out of our Constitution. That's the right to own property, and what we call regulatory taking of property and property rights, such as you own land along the ocean and you want to build, and you go try to get building permits, and you hit a whole series of environmental regulations which effectively prevents you from developing your property. A very serious and important right, again, that rises from our Constitution, the United States Constitution. Then, of course, we have the home, and there was a movie about it, The Money Pit, which was a funny movie, but not so funny, about buying a property, as is or without proper inspections, and literally getting involved in a monetary nightmare. Of course, with the money pit, there's the money trap, which is similar in many ways. You're just caught, you can't get out. You just keep putting more money in, and then you find something else. And then there's the one of the, I'm not trying to be prejudiced, but the bankruptcy judge down in Texas, down south. And at that time I was with a real estate investment trust that was controlled out of Massachusetts and New Jersey. And the judge said, I ain't letting no northerner going to tell me what to do. And my accent was bad. But sure enough, that bankruptcy judge was not going to allow us to do what we wanted to do while we remained in bankruptcy. And that was a struggle. Going back to California, although it applies really everywhere, is buying residential property without an inspection, waiving the inspection. And the Lord knows that is going to be a nightmare situation for more clients than I can tell. That'll be described in picturesque detail. And then the next question is, what are those little flying things that are crawling in the bathroom? Those little flying things that turn out that are eating away at our foundation, at our structure. And of course, they're termites. We'll discuss those little flying things in greater detail. And the next has to do with a problem not uniquely in Florida, but more prevalently in Florida, which is mold, because it's so damp and so much moisture and the humidity is so high that if a property is not air conditioned, there'll be so much humidity in the house that'll build up and the moisture will form mold. And mold is very toxic. It causes an unbelievable number of allergies and sickness, and in some cases, very serious sickness. And it's not a pleasant place to be in, particularly if you're a tenant and the landlord doesn't want to do anything. So that requires a little bit of oomph to get the landlord going. And then there's the one where I just want to build a little small house on the lot. And if you're in California, although in many other states, you're going to run into a series of regulations, building regulations, zoning regulations, subdivision regulations, property regulations, that will regulate you to death. And what might seemingly be, oh, I just want to build a little house, your software costs, your engineering costs, your permitting costs skyrocket. Not unusual and very, very common. The next one I'll describe before I stop and take a little break from these heartaches has to do with your children playing out back. Unfortunately, they're playing in soils that contains arsenic. Well, what did that come from? Well, during the war, they used that as a ballistic shooting range. And of course, all the lead and from the bullets and ammunition contained highly toxic substances which, while seemingly attempted to be buried by the developer, were not buried properly. I'm going to stop here and catch my breath, having mentioned a nightmare situations that my clients unfortunately experienced, or that my family experienced. And I'm going to continue this and ultimately, as I said, get into each topic in detail with the hope that these situations will not be present in your life with your family, and that you can make sure that you avoid landing up in debtor's prison. Thank you. My name again is Henry Portner, and I will surely be following up.